Welcome to the Mr. Therapist and the Counselor podcast. And today we'll be talking about insecurities.
Let's go.
Let's check out the show. You guys stop.
You didn't even let me do anything.
Oh.
You didn't let me do anything. We can start it just like this. This is good.
Yeah.
This is the start of the podcast.
We're going to start.
What's going on with you?
No. We're starting now?
I thought we were just rolling with it.
No, we're starting now.
Okay.
All right, just start right now.
Okay, here we go.
Am I starting? All right. Jesse. What's up, man?
We should probably do one of our high fives or one of our fist bumps right now to make this completely
by the way,
on par.
I think the people like the fist pump. I think I got a lot of good feedback about the fist pump.
Good deal. Speaking of feedback, you told me you wanted to just talk about, in the short time we've been doing this, you want to talk about the feedback that's been provided by some of the people that have been checking us out or following us. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we got a lot of people who, thank you so much for people who've subscribed, who've watched, who've supported. I think we're just kind of taking off on this. So any support is awesome. Sharing it, that's awesome. So we appreciate you guys.
yeah, I do want to make a joke about my mom going on to TikTok and clicking the button. Is there a button for TikTok?
Whoa,
I should know this
Your
better.
mom has TikTok?
I'm kidding. I was gonna be funny, but in all sincerity,
You should have said Facebook.
I should. Hey, my mom's cool. She can hang. She can do
Everybody
TikTok.
has a Facebook is good.
Yeah, I know. I just want to say it is kind of a cool thing that we've gotten the feedback that we've received. So truly appreciate that. So because I tend to make a joke about so many different things, but yeah, on the serious tip, it's been really awesome just to receive any type of feedback.
Yeah.
So, and where we go with this, yeah, we're having a good time with it and being creative with it, and yeah, we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But there's no but actually with that. Today we are going to talk about insecurities. That's the topic today. Yeah. And doing something like this on a social media platform, we're really putting ourselves out and being vulnerable. That's actually something I wanted to mention because on the feedback tip, I did get some feedback. I got this one person who told me what they really appreciated about one of our podcasts, the couple that have been released so far, was that they really appreciated the vulnerability piece.
Yeah.
We did an episode. We were talking about men's issues, but you were talking about, your relationship with your father and my relationship with my father, and it really grabbed them. So I know as we continue throughout this process and this journey, I think we're going to be more and more open, and I really admired that. I appreciated the feedback, and I admired you. You were able to go somewhere. It challenges me to be there. But still, we're not going to talk about our own personal insecurities, but we're going to talk more about insecurities as in our professional roles as being a therapist and also as a counselor, what we face, what we encounter, what we experience. So,
kind of opening the door to the profession, right? Because I think, I have a lot of my family members who they look up to me as a mental health professional, and they're like, wow, they just look at me in a certain light, right? And sometimes it makes it, even feedback like that, I'm just like, man, do you you don't even realize just how human I am, right?
Yes.
It's just because I got a degree and I work in this field doesn't mean that I don't have insecurities myself. And so, as mental health professionals, we all struggle with that in one way or another when we're working with clients.
Right. This is not trying to be an egocentric comment, but often throughout my time in the field working with addicts and mental health, occasionally you'll get those clients that might say something like, you saved my life. Not exactly that statement, which to hear that to me is just, it is such a powerful thing, right?
Yeah.
To hear somebody say you've changed my life, or I've had somebody say along the lines if I didn't do this or if I didn't meet you and other people throughout the process, and to me that's just sometimes I take that feedback and I do. There's an expectation and the reputation that I'm creating, and so
it's nice to receive that feedback, and it's almost it's even healthy, I guess, to some extent to soak it in, receive it, accept it. But I think if you're not careful, it almost, I don't know if this does this for you, but it almost builds your ego a little bit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that comes with even just starting to even get into feeling some way of some type of insecurity, right? It's like,
Right. Yeah.
man, I'm not this, like, am I going to have to do this again or
Right.
prove myself again in the next session or in the next therapy room?
Right. I feel like it's what have you done for me lately a lot of times, which isn't really a very healthy way to think. That is like an expectation I create to myself, but it bleeds into my insecurities. And, you mentioned ego. Ego's probably like my biggest character defect. But yeah, to talk about insecurity. So for you, like facing insecurities, what are some insecurities that you have in working in this field?
I feel like I have a lot, actually. But some of the ones that I guess jump right out at me are whenever I have the expectation put on me to, like, give advice, to when someone expects me to, like, tell them what to do. I get somewhat insecure because it's funny because sometimes I'm like, I actually know exactly what I would tell you to do, but I don't want to say that. Like, the most important thing to me in a moment like that is, like, to connect with my client and to not, like, make them feel misunderstood. And so if I give them an answer that appeases me but doesn't appease them, or not even appeases them but doesn't, like, make sense to them, then that makes me insecure. It's like, man, what if I give them the wrong answer? Like, I'm not even, as a mental health professional, we don't give advice,
right?
So it's like, so that makes me feel insecure.
Very common is people will be like, tell me what to do. I've had people say, just tell me what to do, and I'm like, I'm not here to give you advice. I mean, I'll even be bothered sometimes when I hear somebody like, yeah, somebody gave me this advice, and I realize that maybe from that individual right there, the client I'm working with, maybe they took something, they took that feedback and turned it into advice. Well, they told me what to do, right. But I really will try to, like, share the difference between them. Like, to me, I'm going to provide some feedback from experiences that I've gone through, but at times I don't even know what's going on in my own life, and I'm not going to tell you just because it worked for me. Does that mean it's going to work for you? No, not whatsoever. Yeah. So I need to, like, break that down. But I know sometimes, and I'm not trying to, like, minimize somebody going through therapy or counseling for the very first time. Like, there is still, like, maybe some limited insight, and they're grasping at straws too as well, though, right? Like, they're going to take whatever's thrown their way and, like, this is great. This is going to help me. So Jesse said this, and right, so I'm going to try this. So I can't change their experience or their perception of what I'm saying. So my feedback becomes advice. There's nothing I can do. I can't change that.
When I was getting supervision, when I was working to get my hours to become licensed, I remember feeling this way all the time, feeling like, okay, someone's going to ask me what to do, especially early on. Like, I started practicing therapy when I was like 26, maybe 25. Okay. And I was working with clients who were, like, a lot older than me, a lot more, experienced than I had. And I remember feeling just so insecure about it. But I remember the advice of, like, the therapist who was supervising me. And she was like,
feedback or advice?
Feedback or advice. Okay, I would say both, right? Like, maybe I took it as advice. Was like, you're not supposed to fix their problems. You're not supposed to fix a client's problems. Right. You're just supposed to connect with them. Right. Like a client is supposed to find their own answers. A client is supposed to, like, find their own way. Yes. You're just along the journey with them, like, helping them make sense of what they're feeling, what they're thinking, how they're seeing issues. And by the way, the cool thing is, like, in the process of that, if you see something that could be getting in their way, like, then you can kind of, like, highlight it, right? Like, hey, what if the way you're looking at this situation is keeping you from growing or is keeping you from learning, right? Like, which is completely different. And I think even being licensed and since 2019 now, like, I still struggle with that, though. Like, I'll go in phases where I'm like, okay, my job is to connect, to help this person understand themselves better. And then sometimes I'll forget that and I'll, like, get into the place of, like, man, I have to fix this for them. Right. And that's overwhelming every time I'm in that mindset. That leads me to feel, like, all sorts of insecure.
Right. I think that's one thing that I've heard throughout my experience in the field is, we're not going to, it's not a magic cure. It's not, we're not going to fix something. I guess we are mending in some way, but it's like walking side by side, right? And that's the big part of, I think, what we do clinically is that we are We're going to be right next to them throughout the process. When they do make mistakes, as people will make mistakes, or whatever it is, if it's they're going to therapy for grief, and then when I say mistakes, I think of like impulsive behaviors, or if you talk about somebody who's in recovery, like people will relapse. So, but it is like when they fall, like in some ways we're there to help pick them back up. So
I don't know if you mentioned it. Did you like what do you get insecure about, like in a group therapy room? Do you remember the last time you felt?
Oh, I mean, I probably have insecurities all the time.
Yeah.
I if you want to talk about specific things that, let's see here, insecurities, I guess, let me ask you this, I guess that'd be more like a trigger, that's something that bothers me. I'd say insecurities more, I was going to say when people are very dishonest, but that's not an insecurity with myself of not being honest, because I feel like when I'm in the group rooms, when I'm doing counseling, I feel like I'm trying to be as genuine as possible, and I'm trying to introduce people to being genuine. So, so that wouldn't really be an insecurity. I guess insecurities that I face often it could be a type of client. I'll bring up like specific like age groups, I guess, with something I've encountered. I was thinking about this earlier. When I work with clients that are a little bit older than me, I think there's that concern of like, I don't know if people are so set in their ways. Are people really willing to change at this point in time in their life? Because I have worked with clients in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
And there's been times I think that older clients, I've never been told this specifically, but hinted at is the idea of like, what are you going to tell me at this point in time in my life? What can you show me? I've lived this time of my life for so long. Like, how are you going to tell me to change this and change that when you haven't been around as long as I have? Yeah. And I think maybe you've experienced this, but people just get so set in their ways.
Yeah, I have that experience actually. Like, I feel like for some reason, younger clients appear, like I'm experiencing them a little bit more moldable.
Yeah.
More like open to change or to learn. And it could just be a complex. Maybe it's my work, right? Where it's like I already maybe have this preconceived notion when I'm working with older clients, but sometimes I feel there's a little bit of a struggle to like penetrate like the mind or change a little bit, right?
But I will say though, that's interesting on the other side of it. So if I get a client that's in their early 20s, there's also that strong resistance of just any adult figure could be like, and
that's because you're not cool like me, dude.
I fell off, dude. I'm like, I'm
get those peppers in.
My jokes are not that good anymore. I'm like, I still listen to the same bands. Like, I just can't hang. But
you say tubular a lot. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever busted that one out, but as I get older, as my gray hairs start to come out, I feel like maybe there's an insecurity with that. Like, can I still connect with a younger group? People have said to me, like, you talk like you're young. And I'm like, okay, well, shit, that means I don't, and that I'm not actually young, but
it gives you some clout in the room.
But yeah, really, it's a little clout, right? So whatever that means. But like, it's just, but there is that, like, I'm like, I was 20 at one point in time, if you can imagine it, and somebody trying to tell me what to do, and not that a therapist or a counselor is telling somebody what to do, but any type of advice from a authority-looking figure.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Yeah. Like, no. Like, I mean...
That's crazy, because I feel insecure that I'm too young sometimes. And, like, I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm waiting for these grays to come in because I want to get a little more confidence in the room sometimes. But,
yeah.
But do you feel... Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of... Because you haven't been you were in counseling when you were, like, 20, right?
No.
Okay, so you don't have that reference to compare if you felt insecure when you were younger, too. But, yeah, I don't know. It's... But interesting.
Maybe this all ties in my insecurities. So as I'm getting older here, I'm also like struggling to find out, like, who am I going to be next year? Yeah. I think this is once again, what have you done for me lately is what I said in the field. It's the idea of like constantly trying to evolve and change, but also hold on to like everything I've learned so I can be the best that I can. So I think some people have told me, like, no, I mean, like, you getting older is a great thing because you're becoming more wise and you're getting more experience, which is very, very true. Yeah. But yeah, I think so. Back to the idea of insecurities. Yeah, and older clients, the idea of like, can I make any change at all? And just because you reference younger clients, just the the I don't want to say stubbornness. It's just the youthful like resistance that they have is the pushback that like any of us did. Not us. I don't want to group us all up together, but I think just the youth, like we gotta make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like let us make mistakes. Like you're not my parents, so I'm gonna do this on my own. I'm gonna figure things out, which can be a dangerous thing for somebody who is struggling with mental health or addiction. So
the setting is so different too from what you work in, what I work in. What I work in. So I feel like your setting. You know, I've been in that type of setting, right? Treatment, and usually the younger clients are kind of forced to be there either by like their parents because they're like, I'm not going to give you any more money, or I'm not going to bail you out of this. And so a lot of times even just that feeling of like they got to be there and they're not there by the like out of their own will 100%, right? So I feel like in private practice it's a little bit different because people come and they're paying, they're spending time, energy, money, and they're just a little more, I guess, receptive to that change too. Yeah. Maybe because it's not treatment, right?
No, you're right. It's a completely different segment. People come in and they'll be like, "Well, my parents wanted me to be here." Yeah. You're like, "Oh shit!" So that's.
But I feel like like we're talking really, if you think about it, we're talking about resistance to change makes you feel insecure, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, because whether it's like a young stud who's like, don't tell me what to do, or an older person who's like, I'm kind of set in my ways. Yeah. Just the fact that there's resistance to you.
Yes.
Resistance to me as a person can make you feel insecure. I mean, shoot, that speaks to me for sure.
So, like my style can be very confrontational. Yeah. The thing is, as much as like ego-wise, I enjoy it sometimes. I get in there. I thrive in it. I know like sometimes I'll walk a room like, oh, I've heard about this client. He's the resistant one or she's the resistant one. So maybe that's my cue to like, let's go. Let's go get it. Like, let's push. But
you like step up to that challenge?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. But don't get me wrong, man. I love when I can go to a group setting and I see people are on board for like being open-minded. It's just like, it makes my job easier. Yeah, you don't want to work harder than them, which sometimes I find myself doing despite I'm telling myself not to do that. Yeah. But there is that, like, I love when people are just truly open-minded. So, yeah, maybe the insecurity really is a resistance. I was thinking about this as well, though. Being, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist. Were there times whenever you were doing this, let's say you were doing like family therapy and you didn't have kids yet. Was there an idea of like, I'm talking to somebody about something I really have no idea about? Because I've had clients say this, like, what is this guy going to tell me? Like, he or she is not married, and they're going to tell me about my relationship, my marriage, and reflecting on that, I've experienced that. I get it. It's kind of that whole idea of somebody who is, let's say if you're working in treatment or in recovery and let's say you're not sober, if you're just a normal person or normie, as some people use it as but like, let's say you're trying to talk to a client. The client's like, they don't know. They haven't experienced what I've experienced. So back to the whole, though, have you experienced that with, somebody who's married when you weren't, or when you had kids, but they did?
That's I feel like it's total insecurity because if someone's challenging how you can help them. Yeah. For me, like, I automatically get scared of that. I'm like, okay, like they're already not confident in me, or not believing in me in some way, and that kind of can lead me to start like doubting myself. Right. So it's nice now that I do have kids, when someone, because I'll still kind of appear young, so someone will like call me on them. Like the other day I was running a group, they're like, do you have kids? And I was like, yeah, I actually do. I got 2.
Did they give you that face that you just made right there too? Like a toad face?
They could have gave it to me, or maybe I just perceived it that way.
You're thinking that, like, what, you questioning me?
He's like, why you questioning me?
I have kids?
So I was like, yeah, I actually do. And then like there was this sort of like settling, like, oh, okay. All right, cool. You hear that motorcycle?
I don't know. Did they?
Yeah, so that was a motorcycle outside, production stuff.
That was that client you were just talking about, just jacked your motorcycle.
Speaking through the window. Yeah. But yeah, I would say that totally makes me feel that way. Let me ask you this, though, because I think this is interesting. When you do feel insecure, like, how do you alleviate it? Like, what do you do? What do you do to help yourself through a moment like that? Has it ever been where like you've been in your head all group, or like you've been like just like off, like,
well, let's say there's that one client let's say you have that one client in group. yeah, I will be in my head. I think I present well, but
Okay.
I'll even have it like a pre and a post where I'm just kind of like I'll be stuck on one client because
Yeah.
it could just be that one person, and that one
Yeah.
person could just throw me off because I know or I believe that if you took that person out of the
It'd
room
be a perfect
would be
room.
lighter. Yeah, it would just be it'd be easier. So I think it's that idea of like I don't sometimes I just don't want to do it. I don't
Yeah.
want to like I don't want to have to deal with it. But to your question, like
Yeah. How do you bring yourself like down? Because I feel like it's all about grounding yourself. Like
like
I was in a room the other day, and I was so nervous to run a group because I hadn't run one in a
yeah
while. And you told me something like previous to that that I had to remember, and you were like, people are just here to talk. Like they want to talk, they
yeah
want to share. They don't have a forum, and so
yeah
that's all they want.
yeah
So I had to like stop thinking about myself.
right
You know what I mean?
there it is.
I had to stop thinking. Yeah, stop
Stop
worrying.
thinking about yourself. Stop.
Yeah,
Here's the thing: nobody knows except for what's going on in there.
yeah,
You like
yeah.
you're the only person. I mean, unless you say, "Hey, I'm really insecure with this person," but maybe that's an insecurity right there. That's outside of a therapeutic setting. Is that sometimes I just will like I'll just eat it and sit and just deal with it, and I won't talk to anybody. Like, hey,
Mm,
this client makes me really insecure. This client makes me feel very
yeah,
uncomfortable. There are times I will share that as I'm saying that loud. I'm like, no, I do that sometimes, but no, there's sometimes where I'm just, maybe it's that once again back to reputation. The expectation of my reputation is like Jesse's just supposed to. Nobody's ever told me this either, but Jesse's just supposed to handle it. He's gonna
yeah.
deal with the conflicted client because that's what he does, and he's gonna call with the conflict. He'll bring his own
Yeah.
conflict, and it's
I
just
do that too, by the way. Like, but I feel like what's happening is you are almost forgetting that you're human. You're putting yourself on a standard of like, oh, I don't get insecure, right?
yeah,
Or like
right.
insecurities don't mess with me. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like that. I'm not human. So it's almost like forgetting like the humanizing aspect of like the job. It's like,
yeah,
I think we started off these episodes talking about like, what do we want to do here? Well, we're human too. We make
yes,
mistakes
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Like we're in pain too. We struggle too.
yeah,
And it's forgetting that. It's
yeah,
actually nice talking to you about this because like I the fact that like I go into that where it's like I forget that I'm human, or
right,
I want to be this perfect therapist,
yeah,
or like, have all the answers and like not be what do you call it? Not be shooken by anything.
yeah,
It's just not reality.
yeah.
It's just it's unhealthy expectation.
This is somewhat, and it's interesting because I think before we talked about this, it's like I don't want to talk about my own insecurities,
Talk
but
about it.
it's opening the door a little bit to the things that I'm insecure with personally, not just in that role, but but I'll say this, like if I struggle with depression or anxiety, I do try to like I don't want to say make light or bring to the forefront like those things even in groups as much as I can. Like I
talk
don't
about it.
yeah, like I don't
Yeah.
want that's not my time, that's not my session, but I can talk about openly about depression or anxiety or whatever it is that's going on because I think it shows clients once again that humanistic side of maybe they don't see us as humans, as authority figures,
Yeah.
as a professional, but it allows them, and that's connection as well, and they're
That's
gonna
when it's powerful when
yeah
when you get the sense that a client maybe feels like you're not relating with them,
Yeah.
or like because that
yes
could lead them to feel just alone. Like you could go talk to a counselor and feel more alone leaving that session, right?
Right.
If
oh yeah
but if
for
you
sure
can read that they're feeling that way and self disclose, like that could bring you guys closer and make
Yeah.
that person feel better, just knowing that like, oh, I'm not alone in this shit.
I would just also bring up insecurities. There are like certain like cultures I haven't worked like very strongly with, but what I'll make sure a point to do is if somebody comes in and I don't know their background and I haven't worked with somebody, I will do my best just to ask questions
Yeah.
and not veer away from the idea of like I am fearful because I don't know how to talk to you about this or that, whatever. If it's a sexual prowess, if it's like I said, race, whatever it is, I think it's important to just like what's going on. Like I want to know because there is that fear of like screwing up and not getting it right. But there will be like initial insecurities, but I think I will just no, I know I will be like, let's talk about this, because this is what I'm here to provide. This is what these rooms provide, is just to be open and just don't don't create this like unneeded tension when we could just be free about our speech.
Yeah, and like the more, it's so funny because when I first got into the profession, it's almost like I felt this pressure to need to know everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I get in a room with someone who has anxiety, I need to know everything about anxiety. I remember I'd read up like diagnosis, like what is this? What are, like, how do you diagnose this? Like how do you treat it? And like you'd come in with all this knowledge in your head about like this symptom, right? But like the more practice I get, the more experience I get, I feel like sometimes what tells an experienced professional from an unexperienced one is like being okay with not knowing.
Yeah.
Right? Like you talked about like some things you don't know about with other cultures or other genders or other identities or other people. It's like and like how powerful is it to say like, oh, that's okay. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
that's refreshing.
Teach me, tell me, explain it.
Show me the way. Like that. It's refreshing. I think so often, I would say maybe in our field, once again, go back to the idea of like we're supposed to have all the answers to these questions. I've done this in group where somebody will say something. They'll process something very deep and meaningful. And I tell them, I was like, I'm not a robot. I'm not going to spit out some bullshit right now. Give me a minute. Let me sit on this. I just heard something that you shared and you brought up. And instinctually, I want there to be like, there shouldn't be silence. But no, like silence is such a good thing, right? In like therapy or in counseling sessions, group sessions. But I really like, I appreciate just like, I appreciate this about me is that like, if I don't know something, I'll be like, wow, like, I just heard that, and let me sit with that for a minute, and then allow it to breathe, and then I feel like often it'll come to me, but if not, maybe I'll talk to somebody else about it, and then we can come up with ideas and thoughts to help whatever that person brought up.
It reminds me, I've had moments in a room with a client where they share something like super deep, or they'll say something maybe like they've never, and there's this build up to what they're about to say, and I appreciate what they say, and I have this pressure to like come back with something powerful, right, or like something meaningful, and it's like, shit, like what do I say right now? You know, a lot. And I don't know, it just reminded me of that. Like it's those moments are moments of insecurity too, because you have this expectation of yourself to need to say something powerful as a therapist that's gonna, bring this crazy level of insight or blow this person's mind, right? But at the end of the day, again, like I go back to like you're forgetting that like the connection, right? That's all it is. It's just like, thank you for sharing that with me. You know what I mean?
I will say this too is like the right thing to say. I throughout my time in the field, somebody said, like if somebody shares something really traumatic, somebody once told me like, just being there, like sometimes that's just enough for people. Just to actually listen to somebody, to give them the time and the space to share something is like, maybe that's all they've ever been looking for in that moment.
And that's what it is. Back to the thing you talked about. It's about them, not us. And we got to remember that. You know what I mean? As professionals.
I was actually going to bring this up earlier, but I thought, well, this is the, we seem to like just go into different places when we communicate, when we talk on this podcast. But we were talking about insecurities in the rooms, but clients that I do struggle with, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, was the honesty thing. It does really bother me when somebody is so stuck in their lies. I recognize, like, for working in treatment and addiction, people lie, right? That's just it. We put honesty on such a high pedestal, right? But it does really trigger me when somebody is so stuck in their lies, like they're unwilling to let go of like any of that. And maybe that's way too over the top there, but like it does bother me when some people just can't even own some of the bullshit, and I experience that a lot. So.
So that's interesting when you say that, and I don't know what situation you're talking about, but when you say that, a question that comes to mind is like, because for me as a therapist, when I think that, because I've thought that before with someone, like, this guy's just lying, but I'm like, there's situations where like I feel like I have to have some compassion for that.
You're 100% right.
Where it's like
I
this person maybe isn't ready, or they're gonna discover, or they're gonna come to truth at some point, or sometimes maybe it's even like, how do I know that they're lying? I don't know. Like,
no, I totally agree with you. I will say initially though, that like that moment of just like this person just is so full of it, and you can catch them and like. But I also
that's just something you gauge.
Yeah,
it's almost like this guy's fucking lying to me, like that.
And it's something I've worked over time to where like I recognize that everybody lies. I actually run this one group, and I'll say to the room, I say, listen, what if I told you right now that one person in this group, let's say there's 10 people, I say one person in this room has been lying to you the entire time. It sounds like a murder mystery almost in some ways, but I'm like, I bring this up, and some people will say like, oh man, that they're agitated or irritated, disgusted. Things will be brought up. Some people will say disappointed, but then I say, but everybody lies, right? So why are we one to say, this one person, we're going to condemn them for being dishonest? We are somewhat seeking the truth, and sometimes the only way we know how to communicate is to BS, is to lie. So
that's true.
So no, it's something like I will say. I think I just struggle with somebody when they're straight up lying in front of you, and they're lying, but they can't even like work. They're not even willing to be like, okay, you know what? You're right. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's an ego thing. Maybe like I need to be like, I told you were lying.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. It's all Well, let me ask you this. I mean, I don't know. I'll go find out if you can tell the truth or not. Like, did you say sexual prowess earlier?
I am thinking about that, and I did say sexual prowess, which is not what I meant to say.
What's up with that, buddy?
I think prowess means a great ability. Is that what prowess means?
I don't know.
Maybe it was a Freudian slip.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Freud and his cocaine use, so like he put cocaine on everything. But like no, maybe I meant to say sexual orientation.
Okay,
that's what I meant to say.
Speaking
of
I'm
more,
glad that's what you meant.
More insecurities are being bred right now here on this podcast.
Yes.
But me, now that you brought that up, maybe I got insecure about talking about sexual orientation.
Okay.
Because that is probably also another group of clients that maybe because how can I connect? And this is something I didn't talk about earlier was, let's say somebody comes in and they're a police officer. I've worked with many police officers. I worked with frontline workers. Some people, if I don't know their experience, or first responders, if I don't know their experience, I almost feel like there's a disconnect, and I feel like I maybe I'm not appropriate enough to be working with them.
Yeah.
And so maybe even like culturally, sometimes I just, dude,
that's
listen.
important to know. By the way, it's important to know when you're too like in experience with a certain culture or with a certain population, because like as a therapist, you have your specialty, you have your thing that you're good at, and it's part of that is to recognize what you are good at and what you can't what you don't know, you're not experienced enough yet to go into, right? Like that's a part of the profession.
I'm happy you brought that up because that's it. It's like those things of just like I want to, and it goes back to maybe something we've talked about a lot in this time. The space that we've had is just the ego of just like, I want to be secure with everybody. I want to know everything about them. I want to be able to like, maybe in some ways, and deep down in my heart of hearts, I'm like, I want to fix them. I do want to like make them better, but I know that's not possible. And it goes back maybe, and this ties it all up together, the idea of just like, we don't have always the right answers. I can't help everybody out. Some people I'll do better with than others, and that's just and that will help me grow though.
As a professional, and we're talking about insecurities, do you take that shit home with you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I've at times in my career in life, I've learned to like when I leave the office on a Friday, I've practiced leaving it there.
Yeah.
And I hope it's not because I've become desensitized to experience. Maybe it has a little bit, but I let's not say on a negative. It's not me being desensitized. Maybe it's just the experience of saying like, there's only so much you could do, and you've done that today. And
there is a
let that go.
desensitization, so to what you hear, right? Like you hear, we hear a lot of crazy stuff. So sometimes there's no shock value anymore to like the stuff we hear. But but yeah, like I think, I'm thinking like there's times where if I've had a rough week, it's hard to judge your weeks because then you're being hard on yourself. But if you had a week where you feel like you weren't very helpful, or you weren't as helpful as maybe other weeks, right? Like I go home and that sticks with me so much.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, damn, like I could have, but then it goes back to just you being so hard on yourself, right? Or me being hard on myself. Of like, man, I could have said this differently. I could have, helped this person differently, said something else, or it's just I feel like it can pile on and roll on, and it's that's a part of that adding to the insecurity, not just as a professional, but there's a level to that as a person, as a whole person.
Since we are, I know we're coming close to the end here. I did want to, just because you brought that up and it sparked like another like thought for me, was insecurities for me at times is people can read like my energy. I think if you get more comfortable with me, if it's the clients I work with and maybe the staff, the people around me, people could tell when I'm off. And sometimes it's not, I don't want to say it's not welcome, but like I can have an off day. I'm not always going to be like, Jesse, loud, like even though I sound like this way on the podcast, I keep yelling at this fucking microphone all the time, like I'm on stage. But like it's like this kind of concept of like I have to be a certain way, and that can create an insecurity for me. This past week I was working and I kept noticing something had happened at work. I had an incident with a client and just not connecting with them, and I had multiple staff be like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Am I just? Can people just read me when I'm like go in my head?" And I was somewhat
frustrate you even more when they ask you. Yeah,
I think I brought it up to somebody. I was like, it's that tendency of like people all of a sudden they want to be there for you or tell you, or like when people start giving you like, "You're great, you're so good at what you do." I'm like, why can't you tell me after not after I had a conflict with a client?
Yeah. That goes back to the human thing though. Like that's, I feel, and I've been there, and that's us like needing to recognize that we're human. Like you said, you can have an off day, and so when someone asks you, or when someone, I can imagine you being like, "Damn, what the hell?" Like there's, but is that expectation of that people have of you, or is that an expectation you have of yourself, right? Of like, can I not have a fucking off day? Like, is that part of you kind of telling me?
Oh, it's all me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all me.
Yeah.
It's the guy I see every morning.
I wonder.
Look in the mirror.
We got to talk to we got to get other professionals in here, because I wonder how many professionals deal with this, right? Like, it's a cool thing to talk about with you.
Please tell me I'm not the only screwed up one.
Yeah,
right?
no. And that's why I like talking about this with you, because I feel like so validated in my own shit. Like I'm like, damn, like I go through that shit too. Like like sometimes I feel like I can't have an off day. I can't fumble. I can't like not be completely 100% on point in a room. Where it's like, no, that's not true, dude. Like you're good. Like
maybe the hope of this, I know we've had like kind of a mission statement discussion, but maybe it is building a community for us as well, and then that promotes to other people. Like once again, we're all human. We all struggle. But because we are the ones in that room or in that session, and we have to put on that mask and present something that people are expecting, there's a lot more to it than that. So.
Yeah, and it's a W, I think, when we can show up without that mask on, right? Or like even if it's off a little bit. Does that make a weird face there? That makes sense to you?
I'm starting to get very concerned because you told me earlier you might be concussed. So this could be the greatest podcast of all time. Particularly, you're working through a concussion right now.
Yeah.
So.
What are we doing right now?
you started like Happy Mother's Day, and I was like, bro, wrong day. Like
I was playing soccer earlier, and I stopped the ball coming my way with my head, and I came down with some ringing in my ears and a little pop in the drum. And I've been feeling a little foggy the last couple hours, but yeah, I'll take some pizza with that too.
I think we're in a good spot right now to wrap it up and take you over to the emergency department. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. I did good, right?
Right,
I did good.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
All right, man.